Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Unearthed Horticulture. Last time we discussed little plants, how adorable they are, how challenging they can be to keep alive in our houses, and then also how to set yourself up for success where that pot dimension is concerned, that size of plant is concerned. This week, in this episode of Unearthed Horticulture, we're going to take a look at the next step up, the 4-inch to 6-inch diameter pots when you purchase them at the garden center or plant shop. And we're going to take a look at why I believe that is the ideal dimension to purchase your houseplants. So, to take a closer look at this, we're going to head over to the greenhouse. I'm going to first lay out my reasoning why I think that these are the way to go, and then we're going to talk about why the dangerous game that is going too big when you are purchasing plants. So I'm going to set this guy down. I want to talk about this Dracaena circulosa. So, Dracaena circulosa, otherwise known as gold dust plant or Florida beauty, is a very popular houseplant. And the reasoning why I believe that 4-inch to 6-inch pot sizes, largely I like 4-inch better, but 6-inch are great too, for other reasons. 4-inch pot sizes, first of all, you've got the aesthetic value. Let's take a look at this. It's nice and balanced. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cuttings in one pot. So you've got a decent chunk of genetics, just raw genetics right there. Instead of if you were to buy a 2 or 3-inch plant that would only have 1 or 2 cuttings in it, they grow up looking really spindly unless you do some hardcore propagating on that. So ease of aesthetic right here, just for the sake of having a 4-inch pot. Another reason is budget, right? A plant this size is going to cost you more around $10 to $12 versus a plant that is double in size that might cost you double the price. So you still get that aesthetic full plant without spending too much money. Third reason. Let's take this out and look at the roots. Let's see if I can do this without spilling too much. All right, so you can see here, I'm just going to drop that pot. You can see here that it's got lots of roots, which is a great thing. If you were to purchase this plant in a smaller pot size, it's gonna have a few roots, but its root mass is not gonna be ideal to take home. It really needs more greenhouse time before it's really ready for an interior environment. And so that's another reason. You've got well-rooted, robust root system. I want you to also notice that this plant is not root bound. Now, this can vary. You can of course purchase plants that are root bound in this pot dimension, but it's usually less so the case. And the reason you don't want to purchase a root bound plant and then go home right away and repot it is because oftentimes I like to recommend to people that you have a 2 to 4 week buffer period when you purchase a new houseplant and bring it home to your new environment. There are 2 main reasons why I recommend a buffer period of about 2 to 4 weeks. Number 1, if there is a pest present that's microscopic in this plant that was undetectable by me, the grower, and you as the customer when you purchased it, that 2 to 4 week period usually allows you some time to quarantine the plant and see if anything pops up, because otherwise you could end up with a nightmare on your hands if you just jam this in with some neighbors, some of your current plants at home. The other reason I recommend a buffer period is because it allows your plant to acclimatize to your new environment. Remember, this plant is coming from a greenhouse, which has ideal humidity and light and temperature and a different watering routine than what you are going to be providing it at your home. And if it's not coming straight from a greenhouse, as in my business's case, it's probably coming from a plant shop that also stressed it because it was in a darker environment that was different than its even original grow space. And it was trucked there from that grow space to the plant shop, and then it went in your car and then went home. So you can see there was a lot of adapting and surviving that this plant has had to do before it gets to your home. So allowing that 2 to 4 week adjustment period before you continue to stress it out by repotting it will allow you to better adjust your plant to your grow space. So that buffer period is really important. The only reason to buy a 6-inch plant size ahead of a 4-inch plant size, in my opinion, is for that instant gratification feeling. Because look at this Mikan. It's still huge. It's still lovely and lush, but it's still not so big that you're gonna deal with some of the problems that you're gonna face if you buy a plant in an 8-inch plus pot diameter and you're bringing that home. So let's talk about that next. When you purchase a plant that is larger than 6 inches in pot diameter, there are several factors at play that are going to be challenging for you as a home grower. Number one, that plant has spent a larger amount of time in a greenhouse grow space to get to that point, which means there's more risk that it had pest issues in its history. The longer the turn time of a crop, the more probability, the more likelihood that it will have had pest population issues. So definitely, if you're buying big plants, scout. Look for pest damage, look for pests themselves, look for any evidence before you bring them home. Number two, when you are purchasing big plants, because they spent so long in a greenhouse space, they're adapted best to that greenhouse climate. So unless you're bringing that plant home to a really wonderful greenhouse-like environment like a sunroom or a porch, it is going to be doubly hard for that plant to acclimatize to your new grow space, especially if you're buying plants that have special variegation or fenestrations like your monsteras and your philodendrons. Oftentimes you spend like several $100s on a larger plant just to get those mature leaves that have those massive holes in them, those really beautiful white variegations, pink variegations. And then what happens is those were developed in a greenhouse setting. You get it home and the plant doesn't have the same environment or the environment it needs to produce the same kind of growth. And one of two things is going to happen. Number one certainly is going to happen. Its new growth is going to be adapted to your climate, so it might not have the same variegation level or the same fenestration level. And that can be very disappointing to someone who has spent $500 on a large plant. Number two, that plant has developed that growth for a certain light environment, and it might not even survive your home environment. It might really struggle. It's going to set it back regardless, physiologically speaking. So buying those big plants, you kind of have to take 2 steps backwards before you can go anywhere forwards when you move it home to your growing environment. I hope that makes sense. That is one reason that is huge why you need to purchase 4 to 6 inch pot sizes, because those plants are somewhat juvenile and they're small enough that they can adapt a little bit better to your new environment and produce the kind of growth you can expect moving forward from that plant, right? Okay, I hope that makes sense. So there's lots of reasons why buying too big is just less than ideal. And the obvious one is that those plants are so expensive. There's so much more emotions invested into that plant, not just money. And so it's scarier. And should growing plants ever be scary? No. Okay? So unless you have a greenhouse environment and you feel very confident in your skill level, you're a collector, you're an enthusiast, you invest a lot of time and money, and that is your hobby, big plants are fine. Great. That's your decision. I just want to educate you as to what the pros and cons of buying different pot sizes, different dimensions of plants are going to be for you as a plant lover. Okay? All right. I hope that this episode was informational to you and it helps you be a more critical thinking consumer. If you have any questions or comments, drop those below in the comments and hit like and subscribe to see more episodes of Unearthed Horticulture. And until next time, you've been watching this episode of Unearthed Horticulture.